Sorry, I would like to unmute myself, which was done by mistake earlier. And I would like to mention that it's a Ukrainian talk show on Pod TV. As I mentioned, it used to be called Ukraine, Russia, China show. And the reason is I mention it because we are talking today about Russia and China with the fantastic show on the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, where actually Ukrainians were asked not to send any drones or any missiles to that wonderful city. Ukraine obliged, and he didn't do that. So now our guests. Dr. Jonathan Lockwood, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Great to have you as always. And Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine, welcome to the show.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Glad to be here with you today.
Hello. You happen to have a short movie or clip?
Yeah, I have a really short movie which
Okay.
we can start with after that you said, and I have a longer movie when we can watch a little bit later, but let's watch this short movie.
Excellent. Let's start with that.
Okay, that's really short.
That was really short,
Right.
but it's unbelievable. Can you imagine if the former head of League of Nations, I think, I don't even know, history doesn't remind me his name because he failed actually. That's why League of Nations was dismissed, and on their remnants was built the United Nations. Can you imagine that the former head of League of Nations will visit Berlin during Second World War, or Dusseldorf, or some other German place, and be so nice with the Hitler, saying that he's doing his job pretty well? This is ridiculous. I think that this is the final video for United Nations organization, and it shows that it completely failed in all their bases which it was created for. And recent news shows that Guterres wanted to visit Kiev after that, visit Ukraine, and he was denied in his visit. And I hope that in Ukraine, like in Israel, he will become a person non grata as well, because he's not that kind of leader which United Nations should have during these tough times.
I'm glad that finally an issue where Israel and Ukraine agree upon something. So it's a good start. Now, I came up with a good title for this movie that you just shown us. I would call it The Last Tango in Kazan. How about that?
Good start.
Hopefully. So after that, we can really watch another movie. It's not so long, but it's pretty good. So let's start with it.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I think that it's without sound. Some problems. Okay. I'll try to find this movie with the sound. So let's continue, and hopefully I will find another one.
So right now, all I'd like to start with the summit of BRICS in Kazan. I think it was a giant fiasco for Russia. It came through and was defeated on every single point. First of all, Putin started his speech praising Russian army, that it's crushing Ukrainian defense, and it's almost about to take over Ukraine or Kiev or some Avdiivka maybe. Anything will do.
Makes you wonder what alternate universe he is living in.
Yeah, yeah. So he was talking and talking and talking, and his speech was not praised by the other members of BRICS, not even one. Actually, then came an answer speech by first Emperor Xi, then Modi, and they were all made it clear that they are against continuation of that war. They are not praising Putin and his policies and his attacks on Ukrainian people. So that was issue number two. And number three, the attempt to create some kind of a new currency or new way to have a new payment systems that would threaten the international dollar-based international settlement system. And what's happened is that one of the observers said that while that was all nice and probably meaningful, but the countries are actually were spending most of their times to figure out their internal problems. For example, India with China, Azerbaijan with Armenia, and they were not interested in any of the Putin's issues. It was like a joke. It was, you are old idiot. What are you telling us? We don't need your, when we, China, will say it's a time for alternative payment system, okay, we'll do that with or without you. And you idiot, just stay there and don't open your mouth until the rest of the conference. How China can be involved in alternative payment system if it's sitting on trillions of dollars worth of debts of the United States, so they will not put it all in garbage? Jonathan, what's your view on that?
Basically, it goes back to the fact that BRICS has no unified overarching strategy with clearly defined goals that all of its members can realistically support. Unlike, for example, the containment strategy that the United States and its allies executed during the Cold War. Both, in fact, that the strength of the containment strategy was that both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party could subscribe to the overall containment strategy and support it, so that no matter which political party was in power, the containment strategy would continue to be executed. Unlike that, BRICS has essentially no unified strategy other than essentially being generally anti-Western, generally anti-US, but not in all cases, and not to the same degree. So you have a very disjointed and disunified BRICS trying to execute some sort of common action against the West, and they are failing to agree on anything, which bodes well generally for the West and for Ukraine in particular. So, again, I am not impressed at all by the relative disunity of BRICS and its failure, and the fact that they are criticizing Russia, who supposedly is the driving force behind BRICS. It should not cause Zelensky to be losing sleep at night.
Yeah, especially today. Just a second, I want to mention that remember BRICS was put together by mostly Russia back in 2005, 2006. That's approximate time. I'm not 100% sure, but that's approximate time, I think. And at that time, Russia's capacity and China was not comparable already, but still they didn't go as far as they are today, economically primarily, and politically and otherwise. China was not that strong yet, and Russia was not as weak as it is hopelessly today. So that would make some sense, some balancing, some agenda, something to discuss. But today's situation, when not a single country would follow Russia's ideas or discussions point or anything, not China, not India, not even Iran, because all these countries, they have very own specific ideas that they want to follow and advance or so on, they are not the same 100% cases. There are no single issues that would unite them. At least one single issue, there is none. So, Ivan, sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, another funny moment from BRICS that the Turkey application to join BRICS was blocked by India, and it's a really funny situation because Turkey is a strategic partner of United States. It's a member of NATO. And India is also a strategic partner of the United States. So looks like a very strange coincidence that India rejected Turkey to join BRICS. But while we've seen actually that the diplomacy is not working in the modern world. The Peace Summit, the United Nations, the G20, even G7, which can't choose the destiny of frozen Russian assets and can't deal with Russia because there is no one position. Joint position in many questions. They're not working. What is working is weapons and the situation on the battlefield. A lot of analytics are saying that Russia is explicit in their storages of weapons, and the number of armored vehicles, old Soviet armored vehicles, and their storages already dropped below 10 or 15% from the numbers, from the quantities which were before the invasion, and they're mostly using the restored old Soviet tanks and armored vehicles in Ukraine because their production of new weapons is so low that they just can't rely on it. And according another analysis I've seen today, the only 30% of weapons which Russia use of shells of rockets which Russia use in Ukraine are produced in Russia. That the 70% of the ammo they're using are supplied by North Korea and Iran. This union actually is working. You can see that the union of North Korea, of Iran and Russia is working, and it's a big question what Russia is giving except of money to North Korea and Iran, which what technologies, what supplies they were giving to them. So this war actually is a war of weapons, and I at least I've got the video of the sound, so let's watch it and see how the United States weapons are being used in Ukraine. It's really amazing. Yeah.
So it's gonna get a little bit loud.
It's like a rocket. It blows them to pieces. We have the skills and we have the drive. All we need is more weapons.
We're meeting with the 126 Ukrainian Marines at a secret location where they trained to fight near Kherson. The 126th Marine Brigade made its name by holding Krynki on the other side of the river in a daring raid behind enemy lines. And they have a few big guns to help repel the Russians. First, this US-made Browning machine gun might look like it belongs to another era, but Ukrainian soldiers can be trusted to make the best out of it. It can hit a target at roughly 2 kilometers from infantry to light armored vehicles and drones.
Very efficient. When they're trying to land or heading towards our positions, it blows them to pieces. A 19.7 caliber is like a rocket. It's super fast. We had to do a landing, and it only took 27 seconds to deploy it, disembark, load, and within 27 seconds, the position was already covered.
A few seconds can decide between life and death, especially when soldiers need to quickly land when they cross the river to raid Russian positions.
Alright, so it's gonna get a little bit loud, as you can hear. So we're on the training ground of the 26, and obviously we can't send far, but they're currently using some Western equipments which are crucial for for the war effort and for Ukraine's defenses.
Next, meet the Mark 19, a US-made grenade launcher that can throw a 40mm grenade up to 2 kilometers. First developed in the Vietnam War, the 3-man grenade launcher is a nightmare for Russian infantry, Persen, one of the soldiers, tells us.
Скажімо так, доволі тихий.
It is, so to speak, very quiet. And if you disguise yourself well, it is somewhat difficult to find it. But its striking force is quite powerful against lightly armored vehicles or infantry. It's better against infantry because they're more vulnerable against these grenades.
Speed is key when bringing men to the battlefield or evacuating them. Enter the unit's prized Humvee, a lifesaver during fights. Those light armored vehicles can go up to 100 kilometers per hour. Some heavy weapons are usually mounted on top, but they can be dismounted to evacuate wounded soldiers.
So they're fast, they're solid, they basically potentially can resist some mines. And yeah, that's basically how Ukrainian soldiers can move from point A to point B near a battlefield, and it also helps them a lot actually react extremely quickly against the advance of the Russian army.
The massive American 4x4, popularized during the Gulf War in 1991, serves as a rolling shield against mines and drones here in Ukraine.
Хороший захист в нього, як відчуваєте.
I think so, but I haven't checked yet.
А від чого має захистити?
The main thing is drones. They're the scariest.
The brigade only has 2 so far, but they need more light vehicles to move fast and use the element of surprise against the Russians. Back to the base, time to meet the men. This is where the recruits are trained. For that, the unit can count on Samurai, a battle-hardened commander who climbed the ranks from a simple soldier. Samurai led some units in Krinky, a village now razed to the ground by the Russians on the other side of the Dnipro River. The river helps retain the Russians, but it's also a massive obstacle for the counteroffensive.
The specifics are completely different. Everyone knows that the logistics are very difficult, so such operations must be thoroughly thought through with a cool head, because we understand that when you lose a lot of personnel during a landing, crossing the Dnipro River may not be possible. It's clear that we've lost a lot of good men, but their sacrifice wasn't for nothing. The gains made on other fronts have given our forces a stronger edge.
The situation is tough, he admits, even in this part of the front line that seems relatively stable. The Russians managed to build up efficient logistical capabilities, and the other side of the river still swarms with Wagner and Pinol battalions.
We are fighting a more powerful enemy. Everyone knows this. And they have 10 times more weapons, equipment, and people than we have.
Ми все можемо, все вміємо.
We can do anything. We have the skills and we have the drive. All we need is more weapons. We'll learn as we go. We want to liberate our land, but we need the means to do it. With more of these quality weapons and ammunition, we will win no matter what.
Thank you. It was a very good video, and with the people like that, I can't see how Ukraine can lose. It's simply impossible, especially if they're getting now. What I've noticed later, there were a lot of comments to that regards. Now everybody, Americans starting with them, Europeans and others, whatever they're saying they're going to deliver, it is delivered on time, almost religiously. No more these stupid games. You will get so much ammunition, you will get so much weapons. Oh, you'll get some now, and then the rest is later. So it's no longer the case. Now everything is being delivered religiously on time, and I really don't see if that will to continue, and why not. I really don't see how Russians can make any progress. And the only thing what they hope is that there were some noises about peace initiatives. And what I believe is that any peace with Russia on this front line, where it is now, it will be violated by Russia in next few months, and they will be collecting a lot of ammunition. They will collect not 10,000 Koreans, so Northern Koreans. They will bring 100,000 North Koreans. Okay, that's not a big deal for Ukraine because obviously because they're much smaller men than Russians, they will take much less ground to after the war will be over. They will be lying there and probably
They don't have any greater resistance to Ukrainian firepower than the Russians do. And if they engage in the same kind of meat attacks that the Russians engage in, they will die just as quickly. So it's not a question of being able to overwhelm with superior quality. They don't have it.
Also, don't forget that there is also South Korea, which is watching.
Yes, I was about to mention that. Yes, the fact that
Right.
South Korea is very much, they see their interests being very much involved. And if they decide to send, I read an article where evaluating South Korea's military capabilities, they have a very impressive and intimidating array of weapons, which has been steadily built up over their many years of alliance with the United States, and for which they have a surplus of weapons they could easily provide Ukraine. And
Not
so
only
it's very
that,
helpful.
South Korea is for many, many years designing how to get inroads to supply NATO countries with their armaments. And right now they see a great opportunity because West is crying that they don't have enough armor to give to Ukraine. They don't have enough weapons. They don't produce enough weapons. So, well, here comes South Korea, which has enough weapons of high quality, and they can produce many more. So all that noise about that they don't have enough weapons or so on, that's all going to be ruined by South Korea.
Yes, and South Korea has a surplus, and consider the fact that if North Korea is sending manpower to Russia, that decreases any threat that North Korea can pose to South Korea.
Absolutely.
They can't go in both directions at once. They don't have the manpower for it. So they're choosing to commit manpower to Russia rather than try to further threaten South Korea. They can bluster all they like, but in fact, South Korea can now afford, for its part, to send at least weaponry, considerable weaponry to Ukraine. And in theory, they could also, if North Korea continues to supply manpower to Russia, South Korea could counter, because they have talked about sending at least intelligence and other types of personnel to Ukraine to assist in that war. They wouldn't necessarily be on the front lines, but they would be there providing intelligence and training and logistical support to Ukraine, all of which helps.
They will send a lot of translated people, because there are already few North Koreans are already gave up, and they're now
And
being.
they could gain a lot of information from those North Koreans about the Russians and their plans and their capabilities. So all that works in favor of Ukraine.
North Korean army people, they're getting training in Russia from Russian instructors. So they may have their translators in North Korea, because I don't think that any Russian instructors know Korean language. So it must be North Korean people. And I think that probably they learn some Russian in school. So that's not completely foreign to them. But since more and more people, North Korean will surrender to Ukrainians, the more translators they will need to interrogate them and to really find out what's going on and find out really how threatening it is before their execution. Yes, Ivan.
And those who will not surrender, they will feed the dogs. And there is
Dogs,
a joke in Ukraine that that time dogs will eat Koreans, but not vice versa.
Ooh. Oh, that's
Oh,
me.
by the way, I'm curious. The North Koreans who are going through training in Russian army, are they getting their usual North Korean food?
They're getting toilet paper. The Ukrainian intelligence, they've just published the specifications for the supplies which Russians have to provide to North Koreans, and there is some pack of toilet paper and some food. So I think that they will be happy of such kind of supplies.
So the North Koreans are probably busy now learning all the Russian revolutionary songs to
Oh,
get.
that should raise their morale.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the fact that Kim Jong Un is sending North Korean troops to Russia, as I said before, Kim Jong Un is probably thinking, "Oh, good, more food for me." He doesn't have to feed them. That's 10,000 soldiers he doesn't have to feed. Good, more food for me. Sheesh.
But from the other side, actually, yeah, I agree with you that it's a good, actually a good point, because this number will not. It's a weak number which Russia is losing on their battlefield, because now they're losing at least 1,500 soldiers per day.
10,000.
Yeah, the 10,000 they will just be killed or seriously wounded.
It's more symbolic than anything
It's
else.
one week supply.
Yeah, it's one week supply actually, and it will not change a bit. But this is a good sign when Russia started asking for weapons from the third countries like Iran and North Korea. It showed that Russia is not as great country, because they are not able to supply their own army and their own war. Now they're asking for soldiers from North Korea, and it shows that another their resource, which seemed almost infinite, the people is also decreasing if they need support from other countries, from North Korea, manpower of soldiers, because Russia was they positioned themselves like a great country with a great army, a lot of people, almost infinite manpower and resource that they can mobilize a lot of people on this war. Okay, why do you then you're asking soldiers in North Korea? Maybe, and they also increased their central stake to 21%. Their central bank increased the stake today, and the last time they did it, it was in 2003. During the crisis, the great crisis in Russia. So it also probably means that their economy is not feeling good, because they had to increase their stake.
And here's another thing to consider, Ivan. The upcoming election. Let us presuppose let's just assume if current trends continue. Current trends suggest that President Trump has a better than even chance of winning re-election.
Yeah.
And he has already stated as one of his policies that he intends to, as he calls it, drill baby drill. In other words, greatly expand U.S. oil production. Saudi Arabia has already announced that they are going to expand oil production. What that will do is that will drop the global price of oil significantly. That in turn hits Russia because they depend for much of their revenue on oil exports. If oil export prices drop all the down into the 60s or below, Russia is severely affected in its ability to sustain monetarily, because then they would have to, because Putin would then be forced to either raise taxes, which he hasn't got that big a, doesn't have that big a revenue base to tax, and or he has to cut expenses somehow, and cutting expenses would mean reducing the level of the war effort, and it would reduce it in essence to a stalemate. And if Ukraine can in turn take advantage of that with their increased weapons of both quality and quantity, and choose the moment within the near to intermediate future to launch another counteroffensive stroke, which could produce a decisive operational defeat, a visible one, for a visible operational defeat for Russia, which would then reinforce the pressure on Russia to seek a peace, an armistice, but one that would favor Ukraine rather than Russia.
Jonathan, I would like to mention, I was thinking a lot about this possible armistice and where the front line is right now. And supposedly there will be guarantees to Ukrainians that Russia will not attack them in the near future as a result of this armistice. So let's look into the future. Ukraine will become part of NATO, whether you want it or not, because that's the only thing what can guarantee Ukraine's being not attacked.
Right, that's the only one they're willing to accept.
Yeah, and if Russia will not agree to that, it's even better. Then the war will continue until Russia will completely lose it, and it's going to happen in next year, in 2025. Now, if that will be arranged, though, they call it a German peace formula. So here is the front line, no more war here. Ukraine, the rest of Ukraine is becoming NATO. The rest of whatever Russians grab, it's becoming either Russian territory or Russian provinces or whatever it might. You can call it anything what you want. But 5-10 years from now, Ukraine will be rebuilt, and Ukraine will become a strong economy, and the country will flourish under this arrangement, where the rest of Ukraine, which is under Russian control, they will be, it will be like situation in East Germany. When East Germans, they were plunging to cross border to West Germany, and they knew sometimes they could have been killed by doing that, and yet they choose, and they were trying to run to West Germany. And that situation could repeat itself in Ukraine under this arrangement.
Or alternately, if Russia is forced to withdraw from eastern Ukraine and ultimately from the Crimea, Ukraine would have a similar challenge to that which West Germany faced, or Germany as a whole faced, in reincorporating those previously occupied territories and restoring them to economic viability and restoring the infrastructure, and hopefully in the long term repatriating some of those Ukrainians, especially Ukrainian children, who had been kidnapped essentially by the Russians during this war. And so there are still a number of problems which would need to be resolved by diplomacy backed up by military strength once the conflict is finally brought to an end. But then diplomacy and pressure would have to take over from there. And obviously certain economic pressures too, which again, lower oil prices would go a long way towards putting pressure on Russia.
That's concerning Ukraine. Concerning Russia, I don't see any bright future or just any future for them at all in the next few years. I don't know where to begin.
I hope that it will be hunger there, and they will require for humanitarian aid from the United States, and those chicken legs, which they've called the bush legs of bush, which was sent by United States to Russia. in the beginning of the 19th, after the end of the
It was
Soviet
great
Union.
deliverance for them. At that
Yeah, they will send to them again, but they will send in exchange of their nuclear weapons, because it was a great mistake that United States helped Russia after the collapse of Soviet Unions without taking from them their nuclear arsenal. Because of that, Russia now is blackmailing the civilized world. And I hope that the next collapse of Russia will
I think
put the end to their nuclear arsenal. And
hopefully, it will be the last collapse of Russia.
Yes. And instrumental to that, again, should President Trump be reelected, one of the things which could be recommended, if they could be persuaded to upgrade, the U.S. Space Force with a space fleet armed with laser weapons as part of an overall worldwide strategic defense matrix, which I've talked about before. That wisdom system would be designed to neutralize the one thing that makes Russia a great power in its own perception, their nuclear missile arsenal. And a wisdom system, worldwide strategic matrix, would also neutralize the nuclear arsenals of China, North Korea, and Iran. And that would, just by neutralizing that strategy of asymmetric response, that measure which would be designed to neutralize the nuclear arsenals of our adversaries, would go a long way towards producing strategic stability and peace in the 21st century.
Totally agree with you. Well, with that, we are nearing the end of our program for today. Thank you so much for participating in it, and have a great weekend, everybody else. And we'll see you on Tuesday, same place, same time. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.